Welcome to Menopause Diaries Unfiltered. I'm your host, Jackie Grant, with over a decade experience of working with women peri to postmenopause, helping them to lose their next 15 to 20 pounds within 4 months without calorie counting, restrictive dieting, or spending all their time in the gym with natural solutions. I've delivered menopause workshops to councils, adult learning, community organisations, and the National Health Service across London, whilst running a community interest company that delivers and hosts menopause and women's health cafes in my borough. This is Menopause Diaries, the podcast where we get real about menopause, the weight, the mood, the sleeplessness, the wins, the hard days, unfiltered, unscripted, and unapologetic. Today's guest is Marla Osna. Have I said your name right, Marla?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
good. Nurse practitioner, mum, wife, author of Eclipse Total Health.
Hi,
Welcome, Marla. Great to have
thank
you
you.
on.
Hi,
Great.
it's so nice to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So, Marla, tell me about your journey through menopause.
Oh yeah, so it's a fun one. I started out. My husband is a guy who eats the same thing every day for lunch, and I am the packer of all lunches. If you're a mom, a wife, you probably are a packer of all lunches.
Yeah.
And I was forgetting half of it. I was leaving cabinet doors open. I would forget. I would walk into a room and completely forget where I was going, why I was there, what was happening. And I thought I was losing my mind. We have a
Yeah.
family history of dementia, but I was only 40. So I was like, well, damn, I hope it's not that.
Yeah.
And so I went to my doctors and they kind of largely blew me off. And they were like, oh, it's stress. Oh, you're just not sleeping. Like, this is normal. It'll
Mm,
go away. The whole pat on the head and walked out. And as a nurse practitioner, one of my providers, who I still very much care about and admire, was one of those people who basically gave me the pat on the head and was like, "Hey, it's gonna all be okay, and there's nothing wrong with you,"
mm,
um, which was a little disappointing. And so, with my background of being a nurse and a nurse practitioner, I went to research and I started researching my symptoms and
mm,
putting them into ChatGPT and Googling and doing all of the things. And
mm,
at first, we actually thought maybe I had a little ADHD, which I actually do, but I think that the perimenopause kind of brought that out, and that's a theme that I'm seeing in patients now. But
mm,
anyway, I went to a provider out in Midwest Pennsylvania. I'm here in the United States, and I laid out 8 pages of symptoms and history and like another 10 pages of blood work I had done to myself. And she was
yeah.
like, "Oh, girl, I got you. Like, you absolutely are in perimenopause." And so that got me thinking, if all of these women are going and they're not necessarily educated in medicine or any of those things, and I was dismissed as a provider already, how are they faring? How are they being
Mm,
ignored and
mm,
told, everything's fine when it's not?
mm. I know exactly, exactly. It's the same thing is happening then globally.
Yeah,
Globally, it's not
abs-
just, UK, it's US, it's
yeah,
Canada, it's
yeah,
Australia. We're all suffering with the same dismissiveness of, what we're going through.
yeah, absolutely.
It's so mad. What things surprised you about menopause? What were the things that you thought, oh my God, what is this?
Yeah, so I have been a pretty athletic, like, somebody who does a lot of working out and activities and whatnot. Even when I was in my higher weights, I was still working out regularly. And
Mm,
I felt like I got hit by a brick wall at one point. I mean, I would step out of bed and my hips would hurt so bad. It was worse than like a tough workout pain. I
mm,
would literally be like, hunched over walking to the bathroom in the morning until I got moving. And I did not realize at the time that that was all part and parcel to these like hormones dipping. And so
yeah.
when I did all of that blood work, my testosterone was 3, which, I don't know what the reference ranges are in the UK, but that's very, very low here.
Mm,
And so, I started on testosterone therapy and I would say within about a month to 6 weeks, most of that pain had dissipated. And it was just
Oh,
wild to me that that could be such a significant impact on how I was feeling.
wow, that is so interesting. So you got testosterone, but are you on HRT?
Yeah, so I'm on progesterone and testosterone,
Yeah,
and I do not at this point need estrogen. I actually found out through all of my blood work that I'm more of a what we would call an estrogen dominant or not
yeah,
really opposed progesterone. My
right.
progesterone and testosterones were very, very low. So right now I'm still cycling female, and I don't need the estrogens at this moment. It's coming, but right now I'm just progesterone and testosterone. And I
Oh,
think that's
wow.
a common misperception, honestly, is, that HRT is only estrogen, and it's not. It's actually progesterone, testosterone, and estrogen. And for some people, they only need testosterone. For some, they only need progesterone. For some, they, need the estrogen and progesterone combo. Um, at some point, we all are going to probably need all three of them, but especially in that perimenopause window, I see a lot of patients who don't necessarily need all of the things.
That is interesting because here we women usually get both estrogen and
Okay.
progesterone unless they haven't got a uterus.
So that's another misconception I would love to debunk. The lack of uterus does not mean you don't need progesterone. We actually have progesterone receptors throughout our entire body. And so, though you don't have to worry about proliferation of the uterine lining, which is the scary part of potential cancers and things like that with estrogens, I would respectfully argue that you do still need progesterone because you have those receptors in your brain, et cetera. And so,
No, no, it was the other way around. So if someone hasn't got a uterus, they will only have progesterone only.
no. So
Yeah.
I'll respectfully disagree with that, honestly. You know,
And
you need,
that's different. It's obviously different where you are than it is here.
yeah, sure, sure. And but I think that the science still remains the same. We have estrogen, testosterone, and
Yes.
progesterone receptors throughout the entire body. So just because you don't have a uterus does not necessarily mean that you don't need progesterone, testosterone, or estrogen. And so I think that that's a common misconception. Um, and I'd love, if you ever want to get back into it and talk about it more, but there's a whole lot of science behind that, and supports that, even without the uterus, you still need estrogen, you still need progesterone, vaginal estrogen minimally just to keep the vaginal vault moisturized and decrease
Oh,
UTIs and all of those things.
yeah.
So there's a lot of new science out there, a lot of things that we could talk about.
And everything comes from the US over to the UK anyway. So I'm sure that will move over to our side of the water, that all that information.
Across the pond.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so and can just, it's just a little question. Can
Sure,
you
sure.
get testosterone in the US only, or do you have
Yeah.
to be on HRT? See, here you have to be on HRT to get testosterone.
Gotcha. Nope, absolutely. So we have some patients who have really nice levels of estrogen and progesterone, but their testosterone's really low. And I think, in my practice, we look at this from a whole body approach. We don't just look at the
Mm,
sex hormones. And
mm,
so, what is the patient's cortisol doing? What is their thyroid doing? If
mm.
those foundations
Yes,
are off, then the
yes,
sex hormones are going to be off. And so, we really take a deep dive. We look at the sex hormone binding globulin. Is that stealing those hormones and
yeah,
holding on to them versus releasing them? And so it's a really big whole body approach, at least in how I practice. And so I don't want to give patients what they don't need. I only want to give them what they actually are
yeah.
in need of.
And it makes sense. It makes sense. It's just this is how it is here. It's crazy.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, it's different everywhere, right? And I'm not saying there's necessarily a right or a wrong way at this point. I think we're still really learning and educating, and,
Yeah,
we're finally getting those trials that, we didn't have for so
ex-
many years.
exactly.
Um, so we'll see how it kind of all unfolds, I guess, over the
Yeah.
next 20 or 30 years, because we know science is about that far behind.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, were there any positives about your journey so far?
Yeah, I think, for me specifically, once I got the validation from that provider, it really um, gave me the energy to go forward and take a class and to really learn everything that I could so that I could help other women.
Mm,
I think at home, it helped me, my mood stabilized. I was able to start working out again without, a lot of pain.
yeah.
My husband happily has a full belly at work now. And so I think, I think that there's a lot of things. I definitely feel like my workouts are more, what's the word that I'm looking for? I still have some of that brain fog every once in a while, especially if I
Mm,
forget a dose. But my workouts I feel like are more effective. I'm holding on to muscle. I'm building muscle instead of that constant workout where I wasn't really getting anywhere. I do feel like that sort of, we call it a meno belly here, that little
yes,
lower pooch,
yes.
that you can never get rid of. That has gotten much, much less, with better balancing. So there's a ton of benefits. Absolutely.
That's great. That's great. So, in terms of anything else that you would like to share with our audience, is there anything, your last final words, anything you'd like to say to a younger you about menopause?
Yeah. Definitely seek out treatment early. We know that it protects the brain, it protects the heart, the bones, etc. Um, your overall happiness, it protects, honestly. So seek that out early. And if you're told no by one provider, don't necessarily take that as gospel.
Yeah.
I would definitely seek out a second opinion from somebody who's really well versed. Again, you and I were talking, and breast cancer patients, there is a place for HRT for those patients. It's a case by case basis, but it shouldn't be a flat out no. It should be a discussion.
Definitely. And Marla, is anywhere where people can find you to connect with you?
Yeah, so I do only practice in the US, but I'm always happy to answer questions and I love educating. So it's eclipsetotalhealth.com.
Mm,
And anybody can reach out. They can check out our webpage. There is a contact button that you can drop a line in if you're interested.
brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you
My
so much
pleasure.
for being on today. It's been a real interesting conversation, especially with, you know, differences in the US and the UK.
Yeah, yeah, very
So,
interesting.
but thank you all for watching and listening. If you have any questions for me or my guests, ask them in the comments, like or subscribe, and I'll see you all on the next episode.
Thank you.